A new piece in the New Yorker exposes some of the, made up stories that comedian Hasan Minhaj has used in his career, especially during his specials and his stand-up specials. Now, the expose in the New Yorker discovers that his personal experiences, specifically with xenophobia and racism, are pretty much just like made up. And he confesses that they're made up. So I'm gonna start with that confession so we get that out of the way before we detail what he has lied about. So in Minhaj's approach to comedy, he really leans heavily on his own experience as an Asian American and Muslim American, okay? He tells stories of law enforcement entrapment and personal threats that he's received. Now, Minhaj, though, has acknowledged for the first time that many of the anecdotes he related in his Netflix specials were untrue. Still, he said that he stood by his work, and he's quoted as saying, "Every story in my style is built around a seed of truth. My comedy, Arnold Palmer, is 70% emotional truth, this happened, and then 30% hyperbole, exaggeration, fiction." Okay.
So, in other words, literally none of it is true.
So we're gonna get to specific examples in a moment, but look, there's a difference between a comedian who doesn't lean into like social justice related stuff. Like when you think of someone like Jon Stewart, for instance, right? He considered himself a comedian, but when he was the host of The Daily Show, his comedy relied on factual stories, events. Like he used those real life stories that actually happened to build off his comedy and to also make a point. And that's what Hasan Minhaj does with his specials, right? He leans on we all thought he would lean on actual life experiences to make a political point in a comedic nature about what the country is grappling with in regard to these issues. Now, with that said, let's start with one of the lies that he told. So it's a story about a guy named Brother Eric, okay? It was a white man who converts to Islam and attends the mosque that Hasan Minhaj's family goes to in Sacramento. So this guy ends up being an FBI informant. This is what he details, one of the anecdotes he details. Now, years later, while watching the news with his father, Minhaj saw a story about Craig Montiel, who assumed the cover of a personal trainer when he became an FBI informant in Muslim communities in Southern California. Note, Southern California. Sacramento is in Northern California. And he says, well, Papa, look who it is. Minhaj recalls telling his father, "It's our good friend, Brother Eric." So he makes it seem as though this FBI informant that had infiltrated Muslim communities actually infiltrated the mosque he and his family was attending in Sacramento. But that's actually not the case. Montiel, AKA Brother Eric, had told me that Minhaj's story is a fabrication. Quote, "I have no idea why he would do that," end quote. Montiel was in prison in 2002 and didn't begin to work for the FBI on counterterrorism measures until 2006. Details of his undercover actions were cataloged in a legal case that has made its way to the Supreme Court. Montiel said that he'd worked only in Southern California, not in the Sacramento area, okay? So basically the Brother Eric story that Minhaj told was based on a hard foul he received during a game of pickup basketball in his youth, according to the New Yorker. Claire Malone is the writer here. Minhaj and other teenage Muslims played pickup games with Middle Eastern men whom the boys suspected were actually FBI informants. But his recounting of Brother Eric, totally made up.
Yeah, look, you want to do a set that's not attached to reality at all, and you're just joking. Well, that's the point of a comic. Nobody's gonna nitpick that, right? You want to pretend that it's true. Now we're having a different conversation, right? And then you want to layer on top of that. Well, okay, it isn't true, but it's emotional truth. No, another word for emotional truth is lie. Didn't happen, and I made up a phrase called emotional truth. so that it's not factually true, it's emotionally true. Which, by the way, MAGA could say about a lot of things.
No,
and imagine if they said it, would we be like, no, it's okay. It was emotionally true that Trump took home the documents just as memoirs.
They're just alternative facts, Jing.
Yeah.
No, this is, by the way, in my opinion, that was one of the more tame lies that he's told. But what I want people to understand, as long as, or at least when it comes to my point of view on all of this, when big name public figures paint an inaccurate picture of reality, they sow paranoia and all sorts of negative thoughts in the minds of Americans about what this country is and what they might likely experience if they're out in the real world, right? And I don't think that's helpful in any way. But let me continue. So then there's this anthrax scare that he lied about, okay? So according to Claire Malone, during one of his specials, the big screen displays threatening tweets that were sent to Minaj. Most disturbing, he tells the story of a letter sent to his home, which was filled with white powder. The contents accidentally spilled onto his young daughter. The child was rushed to the hospital. It turned out not to be anthrax, but it's a sobering reminder that Minaj's comedic actions have real world consequences. Later that night, his wife, in a fury, told him that she was pregnant with their second child. You get to say whatever you want on stage and we have to live with the consequences, Minaj recalls her saying. I don't give a crap that Time magazine thinks you're an influencer. If you ever put my kids in danger again, I will leave you in a second. So the problem with that anecdote is that it never happened, okay?
Jesus.
So the New York reporter reaches out to the New York Police Department. They have no record of the incident whatsoever. Okay, nor do any of the area hospitals. Because remember, he claims that he took his daughter to the hospital immediately. Front desk and mailroom employees at Minaj's former residence don't remember such an incident. Nor do Patriot Act, that was one of his specials, employees involved in the show's security or Minaj's security guard from that time. Okay, Minaj admitted that his daughter had never been exposed to white powder and that she hadn't been hospitalized. He had opened up a letter delivered to his apartment and it had contained some sort of powder. Now, some more details on that. Minaj said that he had made a joke to his wife saying, what if this was anthrax? He said he'd never told anyone on the show about this letter, despite the fact that there were concerns for his security at the time and that Netflix had hired protection for Minaj. So if the situation is that dire, where you're worried about your safety, where even Netflix is worried about your safety, and they've provided you security as a result of that, really you wouldn't tell the show's producers that you got a letter with white powder in it?
Yeah, no, this is terrible, guys. It's got a number of problems. Number one is the lies and the absurd excuses. Number two is this is crying wolf. And it doesn't help on racial issues. It hurts in both directions. Because number one, non-minorities stop believing minorities when they say that this kind of stuff happens. Because they go, oh yeah, here we go again. Jussie Smollett, Rachel Dolezal, Hasan Minhaj, people making things up one after another after another. Now the reality is the people who make it up are a tiny percentage of the actual cases, right? But when they're famous, it makes it seem like they're a giant percentage. And so it is super damaging to cry wolf. And the other thing that it does is it makes everybody hate each other.
Totally.
Right? And look, if it really happened and you want to be part of how to fight back and how to heal afterwards and all that, great, that's wonderful, okay? But if it didn't happen and you're just saying it so that people get angrier at each other and you could profit off of that in one way or another, that's disgusting. So I have one more, but go ahead.
So I saved what I think is one of the worst lies for last because it actually had a negative impact on a real life individual that he lied about, and her family, by the way. So look, he basically lied about an experience he had in high school. He had a crush on a white student, white girl in his class. He asked her to prom, she allegedly says yes. But then she basically stands him up because he alleged that her parents were like basically racist and didn't want her to be photographed with a brown guy, right? He's Indian, he's Muslim. And so he recounts this story. He even, during his special, uses a photo of her with her face blurred out. But people were able to identify who she is. And she starts getting all sorts of threats for years. And it's like whack-a-mole, trying to take down like threads and forums, basically lying about her and her family. By the way, ended up getting engaged to an Indian guy. Okay, so he admitted to lying about this stuff, but apparently has like no remorse over the impact you had on a specific individual that you went to high school with and lied about.
Yeah.
No, it's so disgusting. It's so disgusting.
And so that story is particularly egregious. I mean, you could get her into trouble. You can get her parents into trouble. That's just a terrible thing to do, right? So guys, let's keep it real here. There's one thing that no one is talking about in regards to this, at least not in the mainstream and not on the left, which is that, yeah, there's some thirst for some sort of victimhood. It gives you some degree of credibility.
It's good for your career.
Yeah, and it creates attention, it creates sympathy, etc. Now, no real victim ever pretends to be a victim because they know how terrible it is to be a victim. The people who have not been victimized are the ones that pretend, right? Because they think it's cool or it gives them credibility. And by the way, it's not made like that sense is not made up. It is in the zeitgeist. And so I hear, like, I'm honest with you guys about everything. So I've said in the past, like when I grew up in New Jersey, I actually didn't face that much discrimination. I had a funny name, I was from Turkey, they made some gobble gobble jokes, but I walk into Italian pizzerias and they say, hey, paisan, and everybody thought I was Italian in New Jersey, etc. So, but it got worse after 9/11 and after Trump. You give the context, right? But because of that, I mean, I heard back from a friend that someone in the progressive movement thought I wasn't brown enough. Now, what is that? That's maniacal, right?
It's so stupid. It's stupid.
And
that's what that is.
But that mindset is what leads to people like Hasan Minhaj going, oh yeah? Oh yeah. No, I am brown enough. I am Muslim enough. I got discriminated against this time and that time and the other time.
No, what's amazing, Cenk, is even after he was exposed through the story, he is not apologetic at all, okay? So going back to the girl he went to high school with, the woman disputed certain facts. She told me, the reporter, she turned down Minhaj, who was then a close friend in person days before the dance. Minhaj acknowledged that this was correct, but he said that the two of them had long carried different understandings of her rejection. And here's what he says after that. As a brown kid in Davis, California, he said, he'd been conditioned to put his head down and just take it, and I did. The emotional truth of the story he told on stage was resonant and justified the fabrication of details. There are so many other kids who have had a similar sort of doorstep experience, he said. Yeah, but you didn't experience that. And the classmate that you dragged through the mud for your career is now suffering the consequences of your lies as you're celebrating. You won like a Peabody Award.
Come
on.
God, that frustrates me.
Come on.
So look, I asked that a girl for junior prom in like 8th grade or whatever the hell we called it back then, and she said no. I never once thought it's because I'm Muslim and she's racist or bigoted. No, it was because I was probably chubby and not cool enough. Okay, like you don't have to turn everything racial. And there's plenty of things that are racial. And now when people say true things, then people are gonna, oh yeah, like Hasan Minhaj and Smollett and all the rest of them. And guys, I'm tired of this nonsense that's also in the culture of, well, it doesn't really have to be true. It's just
no, it has to be.
No, it does. There is no such thing as emotional truth. That's not a thing. Truth is truth. Emotional truth is I lied because my emotions wanted me to lie. That's even worse, okay? So yes, guilty.